All right, Jeremiah 21. And before we go too far, of course, God is still amazing. But let's call this chapter Wonderful Deeds, as the king, or the now king of Judah, Zedekiah, is going to try to go through Jeremiah, an otherwise rejected prophet, to try to butter up God with a statement about his wonderful deeds in this chapter that starts out in the first two verses, showing Zedekiah send envoys or representatives to Jeremiah, asking him about Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, who is now invading or mounting an invasion of Judah, asking Jeremiah to appeal to God on behalf of his wonderful deeds. Not literally saying, hoping that he will show us some mercy, but appealing to the mercy of his wonderful deeds, trying to get a good word from the Lord. However, in verses 3 through 7, the answer is not going to be so favorable, because it is going to be, not only is he not going to protect Judah, or protect you, King Zedekiah, from Nebuchadnezzar, God himself is now against you. They will actually enter Jerusalem, and he will give you over into their hand. He is going to then move into an address to the entire nation, saying, open up the word to all of them in verses 8 through 10, saying, stay and die, or fight and die, or surrender and live. God is opening up the way, or the pathway, to both life and death to them, making it simple, even though it's a path that requires humility, a path that they'd rather not take. The path to life is in surrender. As he goes on to directly address King Zedekiah in verses 11 and 12, saying, execute justice, deliver from oppression, or deliver those who are oppressed from the hand of oppression, or else, because of your deeds, this judgment will overtake you. Verse 13 saying, I am against you, in case you forgot, you who inhabit the valley, and say, who shall come against us? Reminiscent of the days of David when he first took Jerusalem. Its inhabitants felt so secure in their position that they didn't believe it could be conquered. David indeed took Jerusalem, and likewise, now that the inhabitants of Jerusalem, God's people, have felt so secure in their position that it can't be taken, he's reminding them once again, lest they forget, it is going to fall. Going on in verse 14 to conclude the chapter, he will say, I will punish according to the fruit of your deeds, and devour all that is around you. Meaning there is, once again, no safety either in the city or in the countryside. God is bringing judgment against all of it. The contrast that caught my attention most being that of deeds. In spite of Zedekiah's appeal to God's wonderful deeds, included in his wonderful deeds, of course, being mercy, God turns the question on him and says, it is not God's deeds that are at issue now. It is not God's deeds that are at issue now. It is the deeds of the people of Judah that he has come to judge, reminding me of what we saw going backwards in the book of Isaiah, to Isaiah chapter 3, verses 10 and 11, which read, tell the righteous that it shall be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their deeds. Woe to the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for what his hands have dealt out shall be done to him. Likewise, Galatians reminds us in chapter 6, verse 7, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. A famous passage that even if you haven't studied the Bible very much, you know you reap what you sow. A reminder that we recently saw back in the book of Isaiah, that we are once again seeing in the book of Jeremiah, that points forward to the book of Galatians. Once again, erasing the distinction between the quote-unquote Old Testament God and the New Testament God, as Paul reminds us flat out, you reap what you sow. Reminding me of the danger in what has been called cheap grace, buttering God up, for lack of a better term, with praise about how wonderful and all-encompassing God's grace is, in a way that overcompensates for the fact that God still leaves us the reality that he is coming back to hold us accountable for our deeds. His grace helps us overcome the struggles that even the strongest of us will have in trying to do the right thing. But make no mistake, his grace is not a license to give up on trying to do the right thing. Understanding that going all the way to the Revelation, one of the final warnings that God's messengers give is not to share in the lawless deeds of Babylon. Understanding that those who share in her shady deeds will likewise share in her consequences. Bringing us back to Jeremiah, reminding us that no matter how wonderful God's deeds may be, they do not include a level of grace that provides a blank check for our deeds.